Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello, and welcome to episode 145 of Mythos Busters. I'm Sean. Joining me tonight is the full crew. Let's start with Justin. Hey, Justin.
Heyo.
How are you?
I'm doing really well, Sean. We are recording in a view where we can see each other in our chat, and it's a whole new day.
I know, and this is particularly good for me because I feel like we're going on a possibly our longest stretch as friends since I've seen you in the flesh. So this is helping. This is helping.
I've been hurting.
Indeed. That's not a joke.
It sounds like I'm joking. I actually am hurting a little, but we have plans.
I laughed on instinct. We've had to cancel plans twice because blizzards, but it is what it is. We live here for some reason, I'm sure. Joining us as well is Scott. Hey, Scott.
Hello.
How are you?
I am super pumped. I also this view of seeing all of you is just exciting. It makes me excited.
And now I realize that I don't get to do the I don't get to pick my nose, I don't get to get up and scratch my crotch, I don't get to do any of the human things now.
I mean, you can always turn the camera off for a minute, but everyone knows what you're doing. So
that's why I love you, Scott. You're always thinking.
Mm-hmm. I say let them imagine.
What's kind of funny about this is now I get to watch Ian just sitting in the corner, waiting for his turn. And now it's more awkward that I can see that. So, hey, Ian.
Oh, hello. I live to make you awkward.
How are you doing?
Well, good. I'm happy that the four of us have assembled together because I feel like it's been a while since we had a foursome, the full foursome happening.
It's been a minute. It was just me and Ian all of last month.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it.
That's right. All right. Well, excellent. We've got a great show for you guys tonight. We've got our normal catch-ups and announcements. And then we are going to just go ahead and continue the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion reviews. Tonight, specifically, we're going to be talking about Amina, Zidane. Right? It's Zidane. Is it the same pronunciation as the soccer player?
That's what I've been rolling with, so I think so.
Okay. We're going to talk about Amina and one Vincent, not Price. It's Vincent Lee. There we go, Lee. Vincent Lee. And then, of course, we'll round things out with some Tentacle Time. But before we get to any of that, just a couple of quick things here. First, quick reminder to any of you not listening live, we do one big recording every month now, and we do it live, and now we do it in a chat where we can see each other, and there's chat within, and we don't have to multitask windows within Discord. I am really irrationally excited about this, but it's great. So if you have it in you, please come join our Discord. We generally schedule these far enough out ahead of time nowadays that you can actually plan for it. So we'd love to have you. Secondly, I'd like to remind everyone that probably in the next couple of episodes, I'd imagine, we're going to be doing our House Rules collection. We've gotten some really cool responses so far. I'm super excited to talk about it. So send in what house rules, cheats, hacks, however you change the game to make it your own. We're interested. I've learned so many cool things over the years watching other people play it their way. So this is going to be a really fun time. So you can send those into, you can call them into our hotline at 203-493-6984. Sorry, it's been a month. Or you can email them to our Gmail at mythosbusterspod@gmail.com. Those are the two ways, right? Did I miss one?
Those are the two ways for now. We'll put a post up on Reddit as well, probably next month as we gather the end of them. We'd love to hear them direct from you, but if you put them there as well, we'll still get them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So super excited to dive into those. Boys, what y'all been playing Arkham wise? What's going on in the Arkham neighborhood?
I'll go first because I'll start because I think you've covered mine probably last month where I had to miss. That's most of the Arkham I've gotten to play. Is We Iron Man Scarlet Keys. And
sure did.
That was awesome. It's our new tradition after doing it with Edge last year. So good.
It's easily my personal favorite benefit of the new release system is the ability to just like square off a day and be like, we are doing this campaign.
Yeah. And we definitely got close to like, okay, we'll do one more and then see where we're at, and happened to finish. But yeah, that was really good. I'm excited to dive back into the box. Haven't had a chance to yet, but the brain burn was there, but also in a good way?
Yeah,
Question mark?
Yeah. I was sagging, I think, a little bit more than you toward the end, but you were like, "Come on, bitch, let's go!" And then we did, and I'm glad that you carried me over the finish line.
That's the way we all play Arkham. You guys have so much more enthusiasm than I do at the front end, and then I'm the person to keep everyone on task at the end.
And Marvel too. I remember our Sabretooth play. Justin was like, "No, we are not quitting. Let's do this."
You don't even know.
Everybody puke and rally quick.
Let's go.
Yeah. Listen here, brother. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Justin's the puke and rally coordinator.
Yeah. So I did that. And then we also, Sean, I don't know if you mentioned this, we started Dark Matter with our friend Chad.
No, we haven't recorded since we actually did that.
Oh, okay. So we started Dark Matter with our friend Chad. And yeah, that was really good. I've been waiting to get my hands on that one and play it. And
what are your thoughts so far? Like, we're only one scenario in, but like even from the jump, it's a very different vibe.
Mm-hmm. I dig it. I'm still working on wrapping my head around the theming of it, but I want to see the whole thing before, or I'm reserving judgment until I have seen the whole thing. But from the jump thus far, I'm enjoying it. I like it. I can see why people speak so highly of it.
The framing of it, and I've only played 3 scenarios, I want to say, when Nick and I started it on Twitch back before he was a trader and left us. The framing of it like very slowly unfolds in layers. So yeah, I'll be excited to actually see it through this time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And oh god, we just did it. I'm playing Sister Mary. I'm playing what will eventually be a Holy Spear Nephthys Sister Mary deck, which I've wanted to do for a very long time, but I didn't feel like it was worth it until I hit at least like a 3-player campaign. So I'm excited to wheel that out. Remind me who you rolled with. You're doing Vincent again?
I just had my Vincent deck. We took through Scarlet Keys. I didn't have time to build something else, so I'm using my well, we'll talk about him later, but my Power Word Vincent.
But what's the deck name again?
Vincent Van Gogh.
So
you're all welcome. Just all so welcome.
Wow.
It's so good. And then who's Chad playing? Was he
Charlie?
Yeah, that's right. He was playing that wacky Charlie deck. That's right.
Yeah, that was fun to watch.
Yeah, so good times. I'm excited to pick that up. Hopefully IRL. That's yet another plan that due to the weather we had to throw it on TTS and like. Hey Scott, you know how on Twitch we have like the butler thing where like as a cheeky punishment someone has to run someone else's board for a turn? Yeah, I had to do that the whole game for Justin because he was having issues with TTS that night.
Couldn't get loaded beyond 62% no matter what I did.
It was like we could not figure it out. It was unfortunate. But anyway, we got through the game. It was fun. But yes, IRL is going to be the way to go from now on. Now remind me, you other two, have you played Dark Matter at all?
I haven't. I really haven't dove into much, if any, player-made content. But that's kind of the way I do it in games in general. I tend to just play the official stuff, and I think it's mostly out of laziness. But
valid reason.
Sure.
I was
now, Ian, as like the king of making content, where are you at with it?
I was following along when you and Nick were doing your run, so I've played the exact same amount. I think 3 scenarios.
You stopped Sean with us?
Yeah. Not because I care about you guys so much, just because I too was lazy at that point, and I think I stopped. So. But I do want to finish.
Really,
I know, like he just dropped that with like such a matter of fact delivery. I'm like, oh. I didn't even laugh at that.
Only kidding. But yeah, I love the
solidarity ever how it comes, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. I guess for my part, I have done all of that because I was playing with Justin as well, and then I started my own campaign with my friend Kip. I think I mentioned this last time because we had just started a TFA run playing Mark and Trish. And the Mark deck is just very much a Mark deck. It's just upgraded for, I think custom mods is like the main new card it has. But my Trish deck is my favorite rogue deck that I've built in a very long time. It is Trish. Damning Testimony is kind of the key card. And what's funny about it is the first couple scenarios that we played went horribly because TFA can just smack you in the face when it decides to, and it did. But on top of that, I was playing the deck very poorly. I was playing it like a normal Kluver deck. So if you guys remember Damning Testimony, it's a 4-cost asset. You put it down. It has 3 evidence on it. You action investigate. You can choose an enemy at any location. You investigate at your location, and if you succeed, you can pull a clue off the chosen enemy's location. So with Trish, when she discovers a clue, she can exhaust an enemy. So it's kind of like it operates very similarly to like In the Know was what I used to use in Trish for this purpose. But obviously it's got some cool upgrades. But the first time the first couple scenarios we were playing through, I was just playing like a normal Kluver deck. Go to the location, clear the clues, move on to the next location. And then I'd be like, why isn't Damning Testimony working? I didn't leave any fucking clues. Like, doy. I was very upset with how it was working. And I was like, this is a failure of a deck. And then we did so poorly in Doom of Edsley. I was like, okay, Kip, I'm so sorry. Like, this campaign's not normally this bad. Like, it's pretty tough, but like it was bad. So we just like ran the whole thing back. We started the whole campaign over. We started at Forbidden Wilds, and then I learned how to actually play this deck. You leave some clues, it turns out, and it's pretty great. And then you throw in on top of that, I threw a couple of XP into Damning Testimony, and then all of my XP after that point went into Janae. And then Janae in Trish with Damning Testimony is a wonderful little dance to play because you can push enemies into clues. You can pull clues to you to play with enemies. Like there's so many little things to do. There were some turns that I sat staring at the table for 5 minutes figuring out like what order to do things in, but it's just a really, really fun deck. So I'll probably share the list for that at some point when we actually finish.
Does the deck have a name yet?
Did I name it?
Because if not, I have a suggestion.
Let's go.
So since it's not just a straightforward win condition, you instead should call it War of Attrition.
Yep. Oh, wow.
Love it.
It's a gift.
I appreciate it. My current deck name for it was Trish Sneckborough, but yours is way better. War of Attrition. Oh, hey, it's Nick. Hey, Nick. Hi, Nick. Yeah, I know. They finally enabled cameras since you're off the podcast. Sorry. But yeah, so then on top of that, I started up a new TSK campaign. I'm playing Amina and Daryl, and this now marks like campaign like 3 or so in the past 3 months where I've played an investigator with like 3 or less willpower. And I was talking in the patron chat earlier. I don't know how y'all like do this on a consistent basis. Like for me, dipping out of like 4 to 5 willpower is like a lark. But like, oh my God, every time Mythos comes around, I'm like, ugh. Especially because Amina. Like we're going to talk about Amina, but 3s, I have a really hard time playing well. I don't know if anyone else does, but it's rough for me.
Yeah, 3s I find in any stat, I'm like, do I really want to deal with this stat? Because like it's close enough that you can work with it, but it's like also requires a lot more work than a 4 or a 5 for obvious reasons. And it just Yeah.
And
I
then
was
the
gonna
other
say,
thing is like sometimes with threes, you'll prepare yourself to fail a test and then like pull a -1 or a 0 and then like accidentally pass way more often than you do with a normal investigator, I find.
as
It's
the
an
resident
emotional roller
survivor.
coaster.
Yeah. I'm trying to fail this one. Oh, damn it, I passed.
Every
Trish
time.
Trish is an investigator I come back to a lot because every time there's like a neat rogue or seeker card that comes out, once in a while I'll be like, oh wait, how does this work in Trish with it? Oh, yeah.
Yep. Like anything that just discovers a clue, particularly if it interacts with enemies, like that's so good.
Like damning testimony is just ridiculous.
It's
For Trish.
super good in Trish.
What's your first few upgrades? I feel like adding
let's see
extra
here.
charges or evidence on it is probably
magnifying glass is my other hand slot to just kind of help bump the test up, because damning testimony at level 0 does not give you anything of a skill boost. So yeah, my first 2 XP were on blackmail, which is you get +2 intellect while investigating using damning testimony. And then everything else was pumped into Genet. I'm playing with a newbie and we're just kind of having fun, and it's TFA, so I'm playing non-taboo, so I've only paid 6 XP for Genet. And I don't regret it. You can't make me. But yeah, so that's where we're at so far. Eon Chart is next on my short list because it's Eon Chart. Yeah. And then I think I might grab like a hiking boots.
those are pretty good.
Anyway, so that's me. What y'all been playing?
I've been continuing to play my parallel Wendy with Bless Jankery, Bless Curse, and it is just bonkers good. It's so much fun. I don't know if I've had this much fun playing a deck in a couple of years. I'm going to put it that way. So if you haven't
And
played
remind me,
Parallel
are
Wendy,
you parallel front and back?
Yeah, yes, I'm like full
Okay.
parallel, and it's absolutely just crazy. So, and I'm using both Favor of the Sun, Favor of the Moon, and Ancient Covenant, which is so when I use the Tidal Memento, I can trigger Favor of the Moon, Favor of the Sun, and then auto pass with Ancient Covenant, and then I get to put both of those tokens back on the enemy, and then those make their way back into the bag, and then I'm using those for other things, and it's
That's
Word of
dirty.
Radiance. It's so dirty. It like
You're just
it
blurs
feels-
juggling.
It's, and for a while I was running just the bless side of it, but I have Tempt Fate in there, which gives me enough curses to play with, but not so much that it's hurting the rest of the bag. So I'm able to keep also my deck down to 30 because I'm not taking both Bless and Curse. I'm just using Tempt Fate. But if anyone wants to talk about that, message me in Discord because I will gladly talk to you about Wendy. The other one I've been trying to mess around with is solo Charlie Kane. And I'm not sure I know what I'm doing because I've tried a couple different builds. He's been a tough nut to crack for me for solo. And I've just been taking him through Dunwich simply because I'm trying to, like, it. It's an easy campaign, trying to figure stuff out. And yeah, have you guys tried solo Charlie at all?
Not solo, no.
2-player.
I feel like he's one of
walk
those.
us through what's the. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like he's one of those ones that I could see a clear like XP leveled up solo build, but figuring out the level 0 and the progression seems like the hard part.
Yeah, I was gonna say, walk us through the struggle, Scott.
Enemies?
Well, here's the thing: it's either clues or enemies. Like I can do one of them well, and when I
I
find
can see why you're struggling then.
Right? Like it's like, well, okay, I can deal with my clues. I'm getting these clues, but then I'm like, oh shoot, an enemy shows up, and I don't have a lot out to deal with them. So I'm like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. I got to put more guard dogs and beat cops in there, and then I go to find a clue, and I'm like, sweet, I'm investigating at 3. That's neat, and yeah. So if anyone has some tips on solo Charlie, I would love to hear them. So. Yeah, ping me on Discord about
still
that.
in the place of looking at tips for solo, so I'll get back to you in a couple of years.
Play dubs. Don't look back.
I have done that. It went well.
Yeah. Ian.
Whoa. Well, I have been pretty much focusing on Scarlet Keys, as I'm sure a lot of people are as well. Although I haven't been able to play a ton of Arkham, I did finish my solo Kaimani face check run. I can't remember whether I talked about it on the last episodes because time again is meaningless. But if I haven't, I finished up that initial run, and Kaimani got destroyed in the last scenario. So I found the initial run of Scarlet Keys to be pretty unforgiving to true solo overall. Like, it depended on the scenario, but it's pretty challenging. So I'm looking forward to trying it again and figuring out exactly how to make it work, although I've mostly been focusing on two-handed. So I did start a new campaign, and surprise, surprise, I'm playing with Amina and Vincent, the 2 investigators we're talking about this time.
Someone did the homework.
Yeah, you can tell what kind of person I am. If people didn't know already. But I mostly was focusing on Amina because I have played Vincent before already. He's actually probably the Scarlet Keys investigator I've played the most so far, surprisingly. Vincent is, but Amina is the one I had not really touched yet. So have been playing. I'm through 4 scenarios, I want to say, with that pair, Amina, Vincent, and it's actually going better than I expected. We talked last time about how Amina was the one who's kind of a puzzle trying to figure out how to make that work. But it's actually gone better than I expected. Like, she's been pulling her weight. She's been doing at least her 50% of the pair, so can't complain too much. But yeah, it's basically a kind of, I think Sean and I talked about this, but because his build was similar to mine, but the like empty arcane slots Amina build. So keeping the arcane slots free, so you can, and then using things like the dowsing
Binder's
rod
jar.
and the ceremonious sickle, and then some of the events like names again. The one that explodes based on how many arcane slots are empty.
Arcane explosion? Yeah, let me just pull up my Amina deck.
Sure. Sounds as good as anything.
I mean, if you
else.
say arcane,
Explosive ward.
Explosive ward. Yeah, I knew explosive was in there somewhere. Yeah, explosive ward. El Rubash, of course. The her second signature is important. And I just upgraded into Sin Eater, so I can't really report on that one yet. But yeah, basically the build is St. Hubert's Key is a crucial one as well. So it kind of just dumps out these assets out to bump up her stats, and then she's usually rocking like 5 intellect and like 4 or 5 willpower, and then just going from there. So it's done well. She's kind of flexy, and I'm running Vincent flexy because that's how Vincent rolls. Overall first report, we'll talk more about it when we talk more about Amina, but Amina is, well, I don't want to say she's better than I expected, but at least my ability to pilot her is better than I expected. I'll put it that way.
Sounds like it's going more smoothly than mine anyway. I went like I'm calling it Shiva Amina because I went Astral Mirror and then I went Binder's Jar. So like ideally when I have the full kit out, I have 6 hand slots. And it's fun when you get the full kit out, but it's like it's classic Mystic where it just takes so much to build. You better hope that the encounter deck hasn't like completely dumpstered you before it happens.
Yeah.
Or the blob doesn't just say no.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to Sin Eater yet. It seems like it's going to be good.
Yeah, I imagine so. I've been saving up my XP for it, so it better be good. That's all I know.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Hey,
we'll talk about it.
Before
Okay.
we move on from the what we've been playing, I have actually a question for the group and anybody listening for the what I will be playing. So my brother, who just got married, his wife would like to try Arkham for the first time, has never played. And so she's trying to get into some of his different interests, and we figured this would be a good one as opposed to something like Keyforge where, then you have the constantly shifting rules, and even though he's really into that, this would be a good one. Mm-hmm. So she has decided that she would like to play Jenny. She's looked through and just...
That's a good starter.
Jenny spoke to her.
Mm-hmm.
So my ask is to any of you three or anybody listening, if you have a good Jenny deck that someone who has never played Arkham could give a try. Just like I'm not looking for the highest power level thing, something with too much jank, anything like that. But if I see Scott smiling.
Ian, do you
over
have a
there,
Jenny
like,
deck you'd like to throw out there?
I saw Scott laughing and I knew it was going through his mind.
Yeah.
No, not
Ian
my
looks
Jenny
behind and he
Underworld
pulls out
deck,
like this
no.
big tome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she never played Arkham again.
Yeah.
And they get divorced. And he moves in with Ian. And
Her first
so anyway,
I
no,
want
if-
that
if-
Jenny deck.
yeah, if anybody's got a good Jenny deck, pass it my way. I mean, I can look too. I can just talk and build. But I mean, we got a great community. I figured I'd crowdsource that ask.
Yeah, you can play Jenny pretty straightforwardly, pretty easily. Mm-hmm. Do you know if Brady tends to or is planning to play on standard, or is he going to go easy as an introduction?
We haven't talked about that. Maybe easy, just for the very, very first time. I think we'll, probably run through the standard intro campaign and,
Okay.
Do that, see where she's at. And if it's a thing she likes, then, hey, they have a game they can play together, or they, I can play with them. And then if not, then kind of a no harm, no foul. But I was just delighted that she wants to give it a try.
What a good sport.
Right?
It's not a small ask. Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll pass you Jenny decks. Probably more than you want.
Bring it on.
Next
Bring it on.
episode, Justin's will be like, "Stop with the Jenny decks, guys. I can't." All right, excellent. Well, let's move it on. Right, Ian, you didn't have any more?
I'm good.
Lovely. Okay. So, Ian, what's going on with the patrons this time around?
Alrighty, so first off, as always, huge thanks to our board members. That's Chris B, Chris H, Chris M, and Chris U, our conglomeration of Chris's. Morton, Jared, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Patrick, Abilio, Jesse, Chad, and Robert. Thanks so much for your huge support of the podcast. Those who are watching the video right now can see me reading off the names. I should have these memorized by now, as many times as I've read them.
You have a good flow.
Yeah, my new goal is to memorize them. Special shout out to a random patron this time around goes to Amy Bills. Thank you, Amy, for your support as well. As always, head to mythosmerch.com, check out the merch on offer. Wear our merch out in the wild and send us pictures, because that always tickles us. And we do have a couple new job titles to give out. I'll go ahead and hand this first one off to Justin. Why don't you read the first one, Justin?
Yeah, so our first one is to Michael Arroyo, who is going to be our head of textile and embellishment acquisitions in the Crimson Division. So when we're preparing for our playthroughs of Scarlet Keys, we need to be themed appropriately in what we wear. And Michael, that responsibility falls to you. Don't mess it up.
The last person that filled that position got Sean's shirt, got halfway through it, and then gave up. So they needed to be replaced.
I was just gonna ask, like, what's the weirdest item of clothing that you like? It can be like the man with the crimson G-string. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that. I think.
The crimson earmuffs.
Right, well, I've got mine. What do you guys? Earmuffs.
What
You
about those
would
shoes
say that,
have,
Canadian.
Yeah.
The man in the crimson toque.
Even Ian, have you even seen earmuffs? Do you know what they look like?
I know
Have you
them in
understand the
theory.
concept
Concept of weather.
Yeah.
All right, and the second job title, Scott. Why don't you read that one?
All right, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but Johann Sjogren, I believe we tried to look it up, Sjogren. We are giving you the position of winning turn validity auditor. So many times people will tell stories of their games and things that happened, and on Facebook, Reddit, Discord, wherever, and even on podcasts. And we just need someone auditing those final turns, just to make sure that everything's above grade. It's like tax auditing, but a lot worse. So
yeah, we don't need any Arkham Whoppers being told. Where every time the story gets told, your skill was like 2 points higher. None of that.
Not in a cooperative game like this. Get that out of here.
Yeah, maybe you forgot to commit a skill card, then afterwards you're like, oh, I meant to commit this. Yeah, we see those.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, there's never been a mistake-free game of Arkham. So
Why you got to attack me personally, Scott?
I will say, I have a house rule, though. If someone does forget to commit a skill card, but they said they were going to in the plan, like, okay, so I'll do this and this and this and this, and then we're doing this, cool. And they just forget to literally place it from their hand. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
However,
but wait a bit. What about if you're playing solo? In your mind, you have the intention of committing it, but you forget to do it.
100% it goes to the discard pile. If you don't, you are just accruing terrible karma from the chaos pack. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's if I'm playing solo and I do the math as if it's committed in my head. Mm-hmm. Like I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3. So okay, I'm 4 up, and then I pull it and I realize it's in my hand. I'm like, oh no, I did the math. But
like the thing is if you're going to say like, oh, I meant to commit this when you draw a -4 and it would make you pass, you must also say I meant to commit this when you drew the +1 and you would have passed anyway. Mm-hmm. You must.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm also very like when I'm playing solo, each of my actions I'm very deliberate about it. Like I lay out my cards that I'm committing next to my investigator with the pips like lined up. So
see, I think
really forget it.
That's a good practice, because the times this has come up for me is because you're just rushing, like you need to finish a game by the end of the night or whatever the case may be, and you're just rushing through your turns. It's like, if I would have just taken like 30 extra seconds to think about it, I would have committed this, but I didn't. So, yeah. Especially
when it's a symbol token that you forgot the modifier changed. Like that's the one that gets me the most, where it's like, yes, I'm at the location and the skull is now 3. Had I taken 2 seconds, I definitely would have.
Yeah.
I allow those.
Oh,
because the tentacle token exists.
Sam the Man Gamgee brings up forgetting to pay for Streetwise or various other... Like that
yeah, similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like most of those cases...
Now how I defeat those.
Yeah, I feel like most of those cases, it's just rushing. Usually is what happens, not taking time.
So what I'm hearing here is that Johann's going to have just endless amounts of work and job security and...
there's a backlog this high.
Cushy game.
Johann, if you need interns, let us know. I'm sure we can...
We have meat to throw at you.
Yeah.
The yearly churn of interns.
They only last 6 months. No one knows why.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely an expiration date there. The final bit of patron business is just as we say goodbye to 2022. Somehow, I don't know how that year slipped by so quickly, but we just want to make sure if we owe you a job title or we owe you swag, something along those lines, let us know. We do try our best to make sure everyone who is supposed to get a job title gets one. Or that's supposed to get swag gets it, but we're human, and so it may have fallen through the cracks, and we don't have an auditor for those things, so other than ourselves. So just let us know if that happens, and don't feel shy or embarrassed about doing that. We want to hear from you so we can make sure you get what's owed to you. That sounds somewhat ominous. Make sure you get what you're owed.
Ian, I'll just build on that. Is we really do want to hear if we've missed something.
Yes.
It's the four of us doing this in our spare time. We love it. We put what time we can into it. We've had things slip through the cracks. Just shoot us a note. It's going to be fine. We'd rather know than someone feel like we shorted them.
Yep. For sure.
Yep. Sometimes we spin a plate too many because lives and wives and jobs that they take time. Who knew? I wasn't warned. So the other thing I want to throw out there is that we did have the kind of normal holiday surge of patrons, which we see kind of every year because people get the game and they get involved in the community and they hear about us, and we kind of see an uptick in patrons. But it was intensely more so this year than any other year, and I don't know if that's just. I don't know if this new release model and the revised core being more available. I don't know if the community is just big enough to be louder and get noticed more often and more eyes get on the game. I don't know if it's Dissonant Voices kind of being like a material thing you actually get for being a patron. It's probably all three. Welcome to you new patrons who came on and are actually listening to the podcast. We're happy to have you, and everyone will be happy to know that the work on the Scarlet Keys Dissonant Voices has officially begun. I wish I had an actual date for you. The way this one's going to work is luckily, since the structure of this campaign is non-linear compared to the rest of them, as opposed to like Edge, where we dropped them in like 2-3 hour videos. We're just going to release these at each individual file as we finish them. So you'll see them start to trickle out onto YouTube if you're a patron and you use it there. More likely, though, you're probably going to see it trickle out into the Arkham Cards app. So pay attention for those in the coming days. Very excited to crack into this one. Yes, thank you for the good luck with all the names. As I was doing kind of like my read through to come up with a game plan and actually look at the structure of the whole thing for the first time. It's going to be rough. That's it. It's going to be rough.
Tika says, good luck with the 40 hours of reading.
Well,
40 hours
too.
Each. Yeah. It's hefty.
I did find it funny that last time when we did the Edge of the Earth campaign, the Dissonant Voices videos for Edge of the Earth were longer than the audiobook of At the Mountains of Madness. So just go ahead and expect that this one's going to be a behemoth because, my God, have you seen this campaign? Anyway, we're excited.
Tidbit ever.
I know, right? But what's going to be really cool is just with all the ins and outs and conditionals and whatnot, it's going to be really cool to just be able to have Arkham Cards read out the things that are applicable and not have to do all the this one feels most like a choose your own adventure book than any of them, where you're holding a thumb in the page and going back and making sure. Anyway, it's going to be really smooth, so we're excited to get Dissonant Voices pushed out, so pay attention for that. And if you haven't checked out Dissonant Voices already, I would invite you kindly to do so. It is where we read the campaign story text for you, and you can have the Arkham Cards app, if you're a patron, read it straight out of the app. It picks the entries for you. You barely ever have to hit a button. It is the coolest thing ever. And as always, when we mention this, I want to throw a big up out there to North, who does all of the coding for actually, or the clipping and coding to get them into the app. And then of course to Zorba for Arkham cards in general. It's the best community tool that we have. IMO.
I think it's the best community tool that any community has.
It's pretty freaking great.
That Arkham Cards app is unbelievably good. So, if you are not using that app, do yourself a favor.
Go check it out. And if you are using the app, go be a patron for them too. Like they put serious work into that, and it is great value. So check that out too. All right, cool. Excellent. Moving on. Justin, what news have we?
Well, I'm just going to start by reiterating meme contest.
Yay!
Right?
Woo!
So we usually do this at the end of the year. We've pushed it a little bit later this year, but meme contest season is going on. So please send us your Arkham Horror related memes. You can email them to us, mythosbusterspod@gmail.com. That's the main way. If for some reason that doesn't work for you, please reach out to us on Discord and we'll figure something out. But I think everything gets through there. Limit of 5 submissions per person. Please try not to copy anything you know has come through in previous years. Sometimes there's just general themes and it happens, but in all honesty, if you copy it, you're probably not going to win. So just be original. We are accepting submissions until January 20th, 2023. So based on when we're recording this episode and when it will come out, this will probably be the last recording where we have a reminder for it. After the 20th, we will have everything up for people to look through and to vote on for a community's favorite. And then it's still to be determined for when we will do our reveal stream like we've done the past couple of years, but we will set up some time to go through all of the memes, give these guys, and we'll see if we can get some special guests on to do a first look, because that is always a riot.
I think aside from our core set playthroughs, that meme stream is still our most viewed YouTube video.
Yeah. Yep. And we should have a link to, I put most of the rules and a general reminder up on a Reddit post. We should have a link in the show notes. If not, it's on Reddit, and I'll be putting a reminder there as well. So yeah, it's a good time. Please send us your memes. We've already got quite a few, but the more we get, the better. And selfishly, as an overachiever, I want this to be the biggest year yet. So help that number go up to help my sanity. And yeah, that's meme contest season.
Fantastic. So excited. It's been fun to see the entries trickle in. I've only peeked at a couple, but they've all been great. All right, boys, let's move it on into our main Tupac for the evening. Let's talk about some cards, eh? Some Arkham cards. All right. So tonight, let's start it off with one Amina Zidane, who is our Mystic Investigator. She's the operator. She has 3 willpower, 3 intellect, 3 combat, and 3 agility. She is chosen and cursed traded. Reaction: when you play an asset, reduce its resource cost by 3. It enters play with 1 doom on it. Limit once per round. Elder Sign effect +2. You may move all doom from a card at your location to another card at your location. She has 5 health and 9 sanity. Her deck building is 30 cards. Mystic 0 to 5, Neutral 0 to 5, Charm 0 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's got 2 signatures and, of course, a signature weakness. Scott, do you want to word Word of Woe? Do you want to read Word of Woe?
I sure do. I'm up on this. All right. Word of Woe is a 2-cost event. It's pack traded. Amina Zidane, deck only. Fast play only during your turn. Place 1 doom on an asset you control to resolve an action ability on it, ignoring all costs, including its action cost. Then, if Word of Wheel is in your discard pile, you may shuffle it into your deck.
Word of Wheel! You want to read that one?
Okay, so Word of Wheel is a 0-cost event. Pack trait, Amina Zidane deck. Only fast. Play when you perform a skill test on an asset with one or more doom on it. Add your willpower to your skill value for this test. Then, if Word of Woe is in your discard pile, you may shuffle it into your deck.
Excellent. And then, of course, we'll round it out with the signature weakness. Justin, do you want to read Deafening Silence?
I sure can. Deafening Silence is a treachery. It is a weakness. It is Omen. On Revelation, move one doom from an asset you control to the current agenda. This may cause the current agenda to advance. If no doom is moved in this way, shuffle Deafening Silence back into your deck.
Oof.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, and also I have to say, like, Deafening Silence has like some of the best. Oh my god, let me pull it back up. The flavor text on that one. Do you guys see that one? Oh no, never mind. I'm reading Arkham cards or not Arkham cards. I'm on ArkhamDB.
I'm on ArkhamDB as well, and I almost read it because it's in all caps. Yep. And then I looked over and I'm like, oh, that's not on the card.
Yeah.
If you're
so
if you're on
ArkhamDB,
yeah, it has a bunch of symbols, but ArkhamDB has it in all caps. Unintelligible squiggles.
I read
Arkham
that there
Wingdings.
too, and I was like, wait, Arkham
Wingdings.
Wingdings. That's fantastic. Phylon asks if we've translated it. Is that possible? Is it an actual thing? Does it just say wheel? I want it to. Okay, so let's talk Amina. A very peculiar mystic, if I may say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing that I mentioned earlier that is kind of striking about Amina is that we have a 3 stats across the board investigator in the class that traditionally kind of pushes you into 1 stat. And I so far have feelings about it, and it might just be because I'm not the best deck builder in the world. But it definitely begs a way different play style than your average mystic. I'd say she is the least mysticky mystic of the bunch, I dare say.
Yeah, and I know that we've had this conversation before, Sean, about Doom play and how it may be the highest skill ceiling archetype in Arkham because of how badly you can crash and burn so quickly. Yeah,
and it also varies in effectiveness so wildly based on scenario. And like even within a scenario, like if you have a short agenda, it's just dead in the water unless you can like get some really quick tricks out, which exists now, but it's a much more marginal way to play it.
Also makes Ancient Evils more potent because it's just one more thing that can tip you over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. That card needed a buff.
It's been a few years. Bump it up.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what, anytime Ancient Evils is in the deck, and I've said this a billion times, I'm going to say it again because it happened in the last 2 campaigns I played. Anytime Ancient Evils is in the deck and one of the agenda flips is shuffle the discard pile back into the deck, it's like a hate crime.
Mm-hmm. I still just think about the Edge of the Earth campaign we were playing with Brian, where we accounted for him, but not for the doom that went on the enemy. And just there was so much doom.
I don't know. Anytime you cycle that encounter deck, it gets weird. And to that effect with Amina, like playing with doom becomes a much more risky proposition when you've got those sorts of things to account for. So
when you have a Ancient Evils in your own deck, essentially,
right? Yeah,
or
right.
very close to, yeah.
Which, you know, if you've been playing Mystic since the core set, you're used to it. Agnes had a similar thing. You could play with the timing on Agnes a little bit if you can tank the doom, but
or
but on the other side of things, it's really nice when you have a scenario that has lots of agendas, because then you have lots of witching hours. And anytime you've got a witching hour at hand and you actually have a little bit of space to play around with the doom, then you can just go nuts. And then that, that's obviously on the other side of things where it feels like, oh my God, this is so powerful. Am I really allowed to do this? It's like stacking 3 doom on Blood Pact and playing down an asset for free and cranking Renfield in extra time and just going nuts with it. So it's very Mystic in that way, where it feels dangerous and like crazy fun when it's popping.
Yeah. I mentioned at the top that Amina was, for all the reasons you all are mentioning, that I was kind of perplexed how the heck you play her, and I do feel like she does kind of differ from most Mystics. But I think the thing I do like is her ability lets her kind of get assets out faster than your average Mystic, so that helps a lot. You got to pay the price of Doom. But I think the other thing is we did get people and cards like El Rubash, who's the ally who you stick assets under her and it doesn't count one of the Doom, so that helps. So there's just more tools to counter the Doom, so that helps. I
want to pause you right there because I feel like you ran over L a little bit too quickly. If you're playing Amina, L is your first 4 XP. L is your first 4 XP. Like the difference at level 0 compared to when you get L in the deck is so insane. Because then an agenda flips and you clear the Doom, and suddenly you've got like 2 more Doom that you can play and not have to account for. It makes Amina pop like mad compared to level 0.
And Sean, can you remind me why on that? I can pull the card up too. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
So L was the one that we actually got to preview, and I love it that I love her so much. So L, level 2 ally, 3 cost, and you get +1 skill value while resolving a skill test on an attached asset. 1 Doom on each attached asset does not count toward the agenda's Doom threshold. And then you can exhaust her to attach an asset to her. So like you're a little bit limited in that exhaust where you can only throw 1 under her per turn, so you can't go like nuts with things. But the ability to throw something down with Amina's ability, and like Ian said, like it's a really big boost to economy and just being able to toss things out onto the table, which Amina needs. So L is just like the difference between level 0 Amina and level 4 Amina, I think, is staggeringly wide.
Yeah, I called her earlier Amina's second signature, but really she's her main primary signature. And actually, like, so much so that I will find myself like doing a hard mulligan in the opening hand to try to make sure I get her, because it does make a huge difference. I have gotten games, of course, because it happens, where I didn't get her early, and it's workable, but obviously it's not as good. But yeah, the way I've ended up playing Amina is, I feel like if you're just gonna like hard pump her willpower stat, like you might as well play a different Mystic, because you might as well just start with a higher willpower. But
phrasing.
No, I'm not doing phrasing today. I've sworn off all phrasing. But I tend to like build both willpower and intellect, and maybe even some other stats if things get crazy. But yeah, I like the three across is difficult, but I feel like you might as well lean into it and make her more versatile, because otherwise you might as well just play a different Mystic. Because that's what she's really good at. And like the scenarios where it's asking you to take all kinds of different tests, those are the times where you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm playing Amina, because now I can try to hit this agility or combat test or whatever on a location or something.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the box came with some tools that are kind of tailor made for her, in the sickle and the dowsing rod, and with the pentacle, right, is the evadey one.
Believe so. Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah. And I also like, the reason I went the path of Astral Mirror and Binder's Jar is it seemed like you you have this cool ability to throw an asset down at -3 cost as long as you can deal with the Doom. Astral Mirror gives you an extra action to do so. So you can use your other actions to actually be doing things. And then Binder's Jar obviously just gives you more hand slots as a result. Yeah, so like you can build an Amina that's got lots of different things. And if you want to go like weird with it, you can kind of bounce a lot of different assets in and out of your hands, even if you're not bothering to do the build where you have lots of hands. And that kind of helps you manage the Doom. I'd say things like Scroll of Prophecies, right? Secrets is the one, the multi-class one. Prophecies is the mystic one. Yes, I'm confident.
Yes.
Scroll of Prophecies, I think, is a really good one because you get the full value out of her cost reduction. You draw a bunch of cards, and then you can bounce that out for the next thing that you want to play. The Hollowed Chalice, I think, is pretty solid because that's the one where you can heal 2 damage or horror and put a Doom on it. And then the other action is you can heal 1 damage or 1 horror, and if you clear an investigator, it takes the Doom off. That's harder to do, in my opinion, between those 2 abilities. So like the ability to just like pop it in, heal off, and then next turn throw something else on top of it. Kind of play like that, where it's almost more like the Sylvan archetype in Lord of the Rings for you Lord of the Rings
there
old
it is.
heads, where you're swapping in and out your assets, and that is kind of another way to manage the Doom.
Yeah, I think the other thing with Amina is because her ability is just an asset. It doesn't specify a type. So I think where Amina wants to live is like those weird builds where you're using the cost reduction on assets that maybe sometimes Mystics have trouble paying for or finding time to play. So that could be like in my example, I have St. Hubert's Key, which I'm not saying Mystics don't run that because they do, but I can speak for myself. I've found myself using it less and less over time and using other things because it's so expensive. But with Amina, it's 1 cost. Like that's nothing. And then also, we talked about Chthonian Stone in one of our recent episodes, like a seal card that's kind of fallen out of favor in recent times, like making cards like that cheaper. So I think there's probably some it's the weird builds that are where Amina is gonna really thrive more so than just your like bread and butter Mystic play.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with St. Hubert's Key. Like she essentially has, whenever I've played Amina, her starting couple turns, like the first 1 to 2 turns, I find are just so more explosive and so much more potent than a lot of other Mystics or a lot of other investigators, because you can pump out 8 resources on the first turn. Like she's a Preston on the first turn, and still gets like a decent amount as well. Yeah.
I just have a more general question about this. So I mean, she's built for Doom play, right? Mm-hmm. I have not been brave enough to dip my toe in that ever in Arkham.
That's because you play with me, and I'm already doing it.
Right, and like I know what I like. I'm happy to try it, and I like seeing the stuff Sean does. But can you guys give like an overview of how much different she is, or with the tools that came out with her, how much that has changed? Because to me, it's been a thing that is neat, but just sort of there. Now it seems like it's a full-on archetype. Is my read correct there, or is it? Tell me.
Yeah,
I think she has baked in payoff. She has baked in payoff that starts from turn 1. Whereas I found like previous Doom play was stuff you had to build up to, but she is like, now every card in her deck can be Doom play because it's on her investigator card.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like if you're gonna trigger or play with any of the cards that play with Doom in an investigator that's not Amina, you've got to reach for it a little bit harder. Like you have to be playing a Renfield or what's Abyssal Tome? Is that the attack one that almost never gets played because it exhausts? You have to reach for it a little bit harder because you either have to have the money card that you are using the Doom for, and then the cards that you're using to release the pressure valve cards that are helping you mitigate the Doom that you're using. Marie, I think, is probably the closest analogy where she's actually in and of herself getting a benefit from Doom.
Right.
But she's got a little bit of a different thing going on.
I think also not just Amina though, like we also got a whole bunch of cards in this box that vastly changed Doom play. So it's not just Amina, like now you have this, you can go look at Marie again and see her in a different light. So I think the change of the archetype is one, an investigator that super supports it, and two, like a dozen cards that also support. I mean, we probably doubled the amount of Doom play cards with this expansion.
Yep. It was always just a slow trickle in past expansions, but this was the first like big dump that the archetype has ever gotten.
Sure. All right. Thanks.
I think it's similar to Justin, since you like Seeker, the clue dropping stuff, right? Like all the clue dropping cards that have come out in this expansion. I mean, it's more than we had before. And yeah, with what's it? Research notes? Like we just got cards that just made dropping clues way more potent and way more.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, there you go.
You're speaking my language. Thank you for translating that.
Doom play, dropping clues, all the same. It's completely equal.
Like because that's always the thing with the mechanic where you're doing a ostensibly negative thing to get a benefit, and you know, obviously every card is a cost to benefit analysis in how much you like it, but when the cost is not just resources and it's not just an action, it's like literally something that is hurting your board state more or less, you know, as it pertains to the overall game, you really want things to mitigate that, and you want a really good benefit from it. And we've obviously had decent cards here and there for that, but this was the biggest dump ever. And like the thing about Doom play before was it was always hard for me to go like full on Doom play. Because like, I mean, unless you can plan for it and tech for it, the scenario sometimes will just shut you down. So suddenly you're playing a scenario that has like 2 and 3 Doom agendas. What's your deck doing? Like all of that cost has suddenly gone way up because now you have to time it. You might wreck the board state. Like there's so many considerations to adding Doom, but now with cards that let you not count Doom and cards that let you pull Doom off of things that you played, and let's see, what am I
move
missing?
Doom
Cards
to an
that
enemy before you kill it.
Move Doom to an enemy. Cards that themselves will, if you fulfill a certain prerequisite, will remove Doom from themselves, which, you know, the sickle, the chalice, the pentacle, and the rod all remove Doom from themselves. So particularly with Amina, when you can time things and be like, okay, I can play the sickle this turn, get Doom on it, and kill this enemy, kill this cultist, and get the Doom straight off of it, then like you've like taken away the entire cost of it.
I'm hearing this as the Arkham version of the katana in Bloodborne that drains your light. What is it called?
The Chikage.
Yes, that's what I'm hearing this as.
It's not a bad analogy. It's a little bit bloodletter. It's a little bit Chikage. It's a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll.
One day I'll get that analogy. One day. I think the thing has always been scary about Doom play, to add to that, is because unlike some other mechanics where you are taking on a negative, like let's say damaging yourself, or adding horror to do something good, Doom affects everyone. So as someone who plays true solo and two-handed a lot, I don't really care about that because the only one it's harming is myself. But when you're playing like true multiplayer with other people and you're so if you take like the Seeker putting down a clue card, you're essentially like giving up an action that you have to somehow get that clue back. You know, that in just basic terms, you might have a way to get it back without an action. But whereas when you put down a Doom, you're taking away a whole round's worth of actions from the whole board. And so that's why it was so important that we got cards now that just let you not count the Doom, because that's such a huge cost compared to pretty much any other cost you can pay in the game, that we really needed some serious support that lets you actually essentially just counter or ignore some of that Doom cost, because otherwise it's just too much. So I will say I haven't played Amina in multiplayer yet. I do want to try. I do think we have the tools now to make it happen, but I think it is a little more stressful personally playing Doom play in, like, say, a 4-player game, because you do have to take into account the whole board state and that you might be screwing everyone over. And also, the more players you add, you're just drawing more encounter cards each turn, and you're just including the chances.
That's the big one.
That's
the big one.
The encounter deck is just going to find that little piece to tweak and just knock you out. More Ancient Evils to see is just the most basic example. But yeah, I think that's where Doom really hurts.
You're describing the risk, but what if it paid off? What if everything went just right?
That's the dream.
Then you'd be like a seeker.
That's the honeypot,
Then you'd be
right?
a seeker.
Yeah. There are few things more embarrassing in Arkham Horror the card game than when you assure everyone that the Doom is fine, and then like one more Ancient Evils comes up than you expected, and you're like,
I miscounted the men, Liz.
Well, it's fine now.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about it.
It's like, well, hey, the board's fresh. It's cool.
Well, I think that's a thing too, Ian, where you're talking about, the costs often affect one player as opposed to the board with Doom. And, if someone tries to, I don't know, push a deck a little too hard on a certain cost thing, like taking too much damage, too much horror, and they get knocked out, they get knocked out. But if you, as a Doom player, accidentally advance an agenda when you're not supposed to, especially like 3 or 4 rounds in advance, right? Like, because you can always like push, and then if it's damage or horror you're taking, you can heal that back or put out some assets to soak. But if you put out that Doom and you can't get it back in time, you've taken 9 to 12 actions from every player at the board. And Sean, I know you. Like, we've had this discussion. I know you kind of hate the one Doom is equal to, 3 times the amount of players, actions, whatever.
I think it's reductive, but
estimate.
I get it. You're fine.
Yeah. But I mean, like, you are taking turns away. And so, but I also don't think we should.
I think it's more appropriate in this context than in, like, the Ancient Evils context.
I don't think also anyone who's afraid of playing Amina, I also don't think you should stray away from her because there is the chance of a downside. I mean, there's a chance of a downside with every investigator.
Yeah.
Sure, hers is a little riskier, but but the payoff. The payoff.
The payoff. The difference is like spilling your beer in your lap versus spilling a beer in someone else's lap, or like
spilling a beer table
on the game table that has like RPG books on it, which is a thing I've actually done. Nick, I'm so sorry. I still feel bad about it.
The true horror.
But also, what's the worst that happens? You have to play Arkham again?
That's fair. That's fair. I like that argument. I will use it.
Yeah, someone was mentioning that Amina, and I think this applies to Doom play in general, is like a higher skill ceiling play, and I think part of that is because you don't need to, but it helps a lot if you're going to be playing Doom play if you know the encounter decks and what cards are in there. So there's this many Ancient Evils, there's this cultist that adds Doom, there's this enemy that can pop up that adds Doom. Because if you know those, you can at least make some better decisions about when to push the Doom. If you don't, you're just, taking a chance, and then counter deck might punish you for it.
100%. I think that's the most important part of what Scott was referring to earlier, where like Doom play is like one of the highest skill ceiling, is it requires that you know the metagame to actually do it well. And on top of the metagame, you have to kind of like be looking at the encounter discard pile and in a way that other archetypes don't really care at that level.
Yeah, you got to be paying attention. Yeah.
What's your guys' favorite charms to throw in your Amina decks? 'Cause I have one.
Yeah, see, please lead us.
Dream Diary, because I love Dream Diary.
That's a charm? All right, I need to refresh myself on which cards are charms.
I know. I feel like I haven't gotten a lot of use out of them so far.
Yeah, that's the thing is I was kind of looking at it's always weird with the investigators that have like a trait based deck building, right? Some of them make out like a bandit and some of them it's like, well, like all of these are in faction anyway. What are we doing here? Charm's interesting. I think the biggest weakness to charm is that almost all of them take up except for the more recent ones, almost all of them take up the accessory slot is kind of the biggest bottleneck there.
For a while too, because she's threes across the board, and you're going to be failing tests in the stats that you're not pumping up. I've also dabbled with Rabbit's Foot a bit. I don't know if I would recommend it, but yeah, it's all right. Oh yeah, Sub-Zero Joe recommending Amina with Dream Diary with Down the Rabbit Hole. Mystic and Seeker are probably my favorite Down the Rabbit Hole classes. So I mean,
they have a lot of good straight upgrade cards.
I
was just kind of looking at the other ones here. The new Guardian one that we got, the Martyr's Vambrace, is pretty solid, particularly since Amina, as we've mentioned, can kind of struggle with the odd skill test. Just a straight skill boost on encounter cards. Revelation abilities on encounter cards, and then the extra soak is pretty solid. It's like, let me handle this, that you hold. That's an arm slot, though, isn't it? That's a hand slot, arm slot. I just invented a slot, guys. It goes in your arm slot.
Yeah, that's my only cheeky ones outside of Mystic. The thing is, like, Mystic has so many good charms, or accessory things or options. But hey, she can take a Holy Rosary level 2 after upgrading from Holy Rosary. There's your Down the Rabbit Hole.
Oh yeah. True. Oh, that's weird. Is that one of the only Down the Rabbit Holes that crosses classes? I mean, aside from the multi-class cards, which is
I think so. And I think the only other person that can take that is Diana. Is that correct? Oh no, like someone like Lil,
and Mateo.
Right.
And okay, no, Mary's not a mystic. I always have to remind myself.
Can you remind me Down the Rabbit Hole?
It's when you upgrade cards, if they have the same during the upgrading phase, if they have the same name, they're one cheaper to upgrade. But upgrading or adding cards to your deck costs an additional XP. So you like slotting in a card that is 3 XP that you don't have a 0 XP card of would cost you 4 XP. So the idea, like my Rex deck at Iron Man was Down the Rabbit Hole. So you probably didn't pay much attention to it because you were busy killing things.
No, I was just punching things.
Yeah, just punching wildly. But there's so many in Seeker. There's just so many cards that are upgraded, right? Like we now have the fingerprint kit. You have deduction, perception, magnifying glass, all these things, and it was just way cheaper to upgrade them. Also, it counts for customizable, which is insane. So,
okay, so it's the upgrade versus good for upgrade makes purchasing new a little tougher.
Yes, yeah, it requires a lot more forethought when planning out your upgrade path. But so take the high skill ceiling of Doom play, and then add in the amount of forethought you need for Down the Rabbit Hole. And are you sure your friend's wife wants to play Jenny, or should she play Amina Down the Rabbit Hole? I look forward
to playing whatever Amina deck you build for me with a chart for what to do.
Oof, need a chart. Sub-Zero Joe brings up Obsidian Bracelet. I need to remind myself of Obsidian Bracelet, but it's the Guardian one. Oh right, it's the 3 costs, and it has the 3 health, 3 sanity. It can only be assigned damage or horror dealt by treacheries, and it can be assigned damage or horror dealt to other investigators at your location. I have dabbled with that one. One of the reasons I like that one too, Sub-Zero Joe, is you can use the Doom to get that out for free, and then it's probably going to go away pretty quickly, so you don't even have to worry about that Doom in the long run. You can probably leave it as a short run thing. You just soak everything, it goes away, and it solves itself.
Yeah, I think there's probably an Amina deck that could be built that's like that style of just like get assets out that have soaks on them and then just use them to soak and just have like an infinite Amina deck that can survive anything. It could be allies too. You just keep pumping them out with the Doom and then just killing them off and the Doom goes away. I don't know how good it would be, but it sounds interesting.
I look forward to you building it and recording your playthrough.
Oh, actually, that would be an interesting Abandoned Alone deck.
Do it solo.
I'm only half joking there. I think you would have fun with it.
I will. I'll put that on the old list.
The old idea list.
Just says, "How do I want to suffer?" And it's just a list of deck ideas.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on? Or any other things before we move on to Vincent?
I think we can go to the doctor.
I know we've kind of talked about it, but like, what do you guys think is I mean, I say this. What do you think is a solid kit for Amina? Obviously, the assets that come in the box are all very good for her. Reaching outside of that, though, what do you think are some good includes for assets for Amina? I'll go first. Scroll of Prophecies. As I mentioned earlier. I'd say anything that's like 3 cost or above you should look at pretty hard, because suddenly you're looking at paying like 0 to 2 resources for it.
Mm-hmm. St. Hubert's Key, I think, Ian, you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think it's a
good pull.
I like Alyssa Graham as a level 0 ally before you get to L. Alyssa's good. I'm trying to think.
It's only one scenario that you'll have her in the deck, though. It's fine.
Yeah.
L first, guys. L first, or you're gonna have a bad time.
I actually still have Alyssa in there along with L, just because I want like that backup plan in case L doesn't show up, and then usually I kill off Alyssa to bring L in once L shows up. But yeah, Living Ink can be good because you have the 3s across, so that's another stat boost there with Living Ink.
This might only apply in the type of build that I'm playing where you have like spare hands, but I have been enjoying a cheeky one of Ritual Candles, because you just throw that in a hand and then suddenly all of the bad stuff tokens are slightly less bad. And with Amina, that means a lot, because I don't know if we've mentioned this, but she has all 3s in her stats, guys. It's harder to deal with.
I like Vinny B's recommendation too, because she can kind of ignore stats, kind of, and her assets are basically free, as he says. Powered is quite good. I also like Summon Servitor for the same reason, like using that Servitor to do the stuff as opposed to Amina doing the stuff. So.
Sure. Oh, Crystalline Elder Sign. Oh man. We're just doing the Mystic duel, like the stuff that all the people who are like afraid of Mystic just avoid. If you are avoiding Crystalline Elder Sign because you think sealing the +1 is bad, then I don't know what there is to do for you. It's so good. Yeah. And going to 4s with Amina, that's going to make a pretty big difference too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In chat, Teacup suggests Red Glove Man, and I like that play for Amina.
Ooh,
I didn't
consider
that,
he just
but
goes away.
Yeah,
he just goes away. He's fleeting. That's a good pull.
Bye bye. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And reaction, yeah, okay. So he's fast too. So that's just straight up. You put Doom on him. He's in play. You didn't pay for him. He goes away, takes care of the Doom. I mean, 5 XP is not nothing, but that's a good pull. All right, lovely. All right, now let's move to Vincent. Justin, you want to read Vincent?
I can read Vincent.
I know you do like him, so.
I do, and I mean, partly because I do in general, and partly because I think I've only played him and I forget which other investigator from Scarlet Keys. So, Vincent Lee is the Doctor, Seeker Investigator, Medic, Willpower 3, Intellect 4, Combat 3, Agility 1, Health 9, Sanity 6. Reaction: after one of your card effects heals damage from an investigator or an investigator's ally asset, add one of your set aside on the mend skills to that investigator's hand. Elder Sign effect, +1. You may heal 1 damage from an investigator or ally asset at your location. On the back side of the card, deck size 30, deck building options, seeker cards, level 0 to 3, neutral cards, level 0 to 5, cards that read, in quotes, heal damage, end quote, level 0 to 5, up to 15 other Guardian and or Survivor cards, level 0 to 1. Deck building requirements, Bonesaw, 1 per investigator copies of On the Mend, Wounded Bystander, 1 random basic weakness. Additional setup, you begin each game with 1 per investigator copies of On the Mend set aside out of play.
Does anyone else read it Bonesaw? Like from Spider-Man.
I read it as Bonesaw is ready.
Bonesaw's ready. I got you for 3 minutes. I don't know why I went like Danny DeVito Penguin there, but you know, we were doing a thing. Okay, so speaking of the Bonesaw, Scott.
All right, Bonesaw is a 3-cost asset. Its icons are Intellect, Combat, and Wild. Vincent Lee deck only. It's item, tool, and melee traded. Action, fight. You get +2 combat for this attack. If this attack is successful, you may take 1 damage to deal +1 damage for this attack. Or action, heal 5 damage from investigator at your location. Test Intellect 4. If you fail, that investigator suffers 1 physical trauma, max once per game. I love the flavor of this card. Especially that second ability.
Yep.
I'm going to heal you.
It's an extreme tool, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I can't read it without having the Family Guy thing of, "Arr, I be a doctor," going through my head.
I mean, we're talking 1920s medicine, so...
Yeah. It was crude. Ian, do you want to read On the Mend?
Mm-hmm. So On the Mend is a skill. It has 2 wild icons. Limit 1 On the Mend in your hand, which I definitely messed up the first couple times I played Vincent. And had a couple On the Mends in hand.
Easy to do.
Yeah, so make sure you remember only 1 in hand at a time. Commit only to a test you are performing. Another one that's easy to mess up. Forced when On the Mend would be discarded from anywhere, set it aside out of play instead.
And then rounding out the set, Wounded Bystander is an ally weakness. It has ally and bystander traits. Cost null. It has 5 health. So we can get 5 health on a weakness ally, but not a real one. All right, fine. Revelation. Put Wounded Bystander into play in your play area with 3 damage on it. It cannot leave play while it has damage unless it is defeated. If it has no damage, discard it. Forced, when you would take non-direct damage, at least one of it must be assigned to Wounded Bystander if able. And forced, if Wounded Bystander is defeated, you suffer 1 mental trauma. And for the healing investigator, it's a perfect little weakness to like pull your ability away to a Wounded Bystander. I love, like, Vincent is just dripping with flavor top to bottom. It's so good. So Vincent.
Yeah, I have had a ton of fun building Vincent. I think he breathes life back into a few cards that we have completely written off. Medical texts being one of them. Yeah, it's... Oh, man, he's so much fun.
He's analogous to Carolyn in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, and I'm sorry, Carolyn stands, don't at me. I think he can be a very effective support character and also do a bunch of shit on his own. Like,
agreed.
That stat line is a good stat line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I talked already.
Right
bringing the heat.
I shouldn't like an investigator with 1 agility as much as I like Vincent, but he just, everyone loves Vincent. He's just so fun to play. Carolyn has never quite clicked with me, and I'm sure there are great ways to play Carolyn, and I've seen some good Carolyn decks, but for me personally, Vincent just clicked right away. And like you mentioned, like there's healing traditionally has not been, especially healing damage has not been very popular in Arkham, because finding the time to do that is kind of a pain and not usually that super feasible. But the way Vincent works, and you get on the mend, and so you get these free kind of skill boosts for doing what you're doing. It just works great. I love it. And yeah, that base stat line. But for me, I think like at least half of the appeal of Vincent for me is the bone saw. I love that card.
I mean, it's pretty great.
Yeah.
I think too.
Do you guys feel like? Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I'm gonna throw out a hypothesis here. I think maybe one of the reasons that, at least for me, that I feel Vincent is at a better station compared to Carolyn, especially when she first came out and he first came out, is the amount of healing tech we got in the box. Similar to,
that's true.
Like what we're saying with the Doom play. There's quite a few really good cards in this box for healing damage, and also volume of damage being healing. Like it just, like Bizarre Diagnosis, I think is just an amazing card. Like 0 cost, drop a clue, heal 3 damage from an investigator or ally. Right? Like 1, that clears your weakness in a single action. 2, if you're playing across the table from Mark, like 3 damage and one action heal for 0 cost. Right? Like you still got to pick up that clue, but I mean, you're a seeker, you're going to do that anyways, right? So,
well, and to your point, Scott, about more tech in this box.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he basically has we were talking about a second signature. I mean, he basically has a second signature if you run Jessica Hyde, because I mean, she just is automatic.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a big difference too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And when you're running Jessica, I have quite enjoyed an old classic that I haven't put in a deck since Dunwich days, and that is Smoking Pipe.
Oof.
Because Vincent himself, with 3 willpower, he can pass some tests, and possibly some of the healing you're packing can be repurposed to heal horror. But the ability, his 6 sanity kind of leaves him a little vulnerable sometimes. So the ability to just like drop your horror off on Jessica as damage, and then she on the mends as she does, like it's so good for a little 1 cost actionless asset.
Yeah, I've been enjoying that as well. And, like any good medical professional, he has a smoking habit, so that's fine.
Doctors recommend Camel. Yeah.
Yep. But the big thing that also sticks out to me, part of it is Bonesaw, part of it is his stat line, but he's just such a flexi seeker, more so than a lot of other seekers. Like, you can run him as mostly a clover, but I've usually run him pretty flexy and he can do a fair bit of killing, and then still pick up clues when he doesn't need to kill anything. So it's just like, it just feels like there's never a wasted moment with Vincent, because you always have something to do. You can kill something. If you're not doing that, you can get clues, or you're healing. Like it's really just figuring out what you want to do, because you usually have quite a few options.
I think that's a really good point, Ian. And Sean, we saw that firsthand when we were doing our Scarlet Keys playthrough, because I think we had it almost every other scenario where we would have to flex what we were doing depending on how the cards were coming out. And the decks were so complementary that it was, oh, hey, this time around, Vincent is he's cloovering. Great. Next time around, it's like, well, here I go killing again. And then there were a few where it's, well, I'm just doing whatever's needed.
Yeah. And you don't get that level of flexibility out of Seekers very often. So it kind of feels good. Like comparing him against Joe, I think is probably the closest, just, based on stats and card access. I think like Vincent can just do things straight out of the gate so much better. He's very, very sturdy. I think I used that word when we first previewed him, and I hold to it. He is so hard to kill. He is very hard to perish. And he's got access to just like good cards, like levels. I mean, we've talked about it since the beginning of the game. Having access to Survivor is good in any class. You got all the heal cards you need, like, and then on the mend, kind of furthering the comparison to Carolyn, I think on the mend is a much more impactful bonus than the extra resources that Carolyn gets you. Like the ability to just kick a test in the rear for either you or someone you've healed. Ideally once a turn if you're doing it right, or if your engine is firing, like that's really good. We pay resources and cards for that normally.
I think too that in the comparison to Carolyn, and I'll probably stop after this because it's yeah. Anyways, like because Vincent
the Carolyn
stands
stands are just screaming into their mics.
No, I mean Vincent. I can't just say like Vincent is good because he seems like a better Carolyn. Vincent has to stand on his own, right? But like you said, with that offering a resource for the horror healing, or offering basically an unexpected courage. I mean, there's times where people are near the end of the game, they're not going to need that resource, or maybe they're running a dark horse deck or like a low cost deck, and maybe that resource is just not usable. But chances are people are going to take tests, and having an unexpected courage is just always handy. So
that just keeps.
I do want to bring up, I do want to bring up what Teacup posted in chat, which is in the thick of it. Because holy crap, right? Like you start off with 3 XP, you put 2
Jessica's.
What do you call them? No, but 2 damage trauma.
Oh yeah,
there we go. Physical trauma. That's the word I'm looking for.
And then 2 Jessicas.
Yeah, and that's survivor access. Especially okay. So also Sam the Man Gamgee asked if Vincent would be good in solo. This is where I'm at with Vincent. I'm setting up a deck because I want to play him solo. That 0-1 survivor access is unbelievable for solo, and trimming up any weaknesses he has with enemies, and also dealing with encounter deck stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree, because when I'm thinking about what Vincent's weaknesses are, one is horror, because he doesn't heal that. He's healing damage, and his sanity's on the lower side. But then you have the survivor access, so you throw in a couple of keepsakes, maybe even some upgraded cherished keepsakes, and you're pretty much good to go at that point. A few other survivor cards that let you deal with horror. And then the only other weakness is his agility, which... there are some like location tests and other stuff here and there that test agility, but by and large it's going to be treacheries, and the most common consequence of an agility test on a treachery is taking damage. So Vincent's like, okay, fine.
Oh no.
So when you look at an investigator who both of their main weaknesses are very easy to tech against, they're in a pretty good place. So I think that's part of why we all sound like we're pretty high on Vincent. And the other thing is regarding in the thick of it, not just you, but the rest of your board too can feel pretty free to take in the thick of it as well, like anyone else you're playing with. And I think he just, similar to how Carolyn does with horror, Vincent kind of affects how other players in your game treat damage too. Because they can just be like, oh, I'll take an opportunity attack here and take the damage, because Vincent's just going to heal it off me. It's fine. So I think
that's always the unspoken benefit of healing.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. You can be more aggro, because suddenly you've got options for getting rid of the damage, and presumably horror. Like Vincent can take the mirror, Vincent can take first aid. There are a bunch of cards that Vincent is going to take to mitigate damage that can be repurposed to deal with horror. Just I love bandages in Vincent.
Bandages
Pretty much
good.
an auto include
good. Yeah.
to my mind. Slotless, actionless.
One of my favorite additions to Vincent is the 1 XP suite, and now it's even more than that, of the survivor skills, like brute force.
Oh, sure.
Sharp vision, even like gumption and strength in numbers, because you're probably going to hit 3. Like if you have like a fire axe out and a first aid kit and something seeker, I mean that's a 4 wild card, which is insane. Even
Piggybacking on that, gang up, like the synergy cards are all really good in Vincent because he's just got such innate access to like 3+ classes.
Well, they were in Carolyn, right? Like that's a lot of people pointed out too. Like she was one that could really grab a rainbow of colors. But even like to deal with enemies, brute force, you're swinging at a 6 if you're doing a basic action, and then you probably have an on the mend in the hand. So now you're swinging at 8 for 1 XP.
You're probably doing 3 damage.
Yeah.
Seems okay.
Guess it's all right.
So we've been talking a lot about card access. I actually want to. So speaking of that and the deck building, I don't think we need to give a shout out, but we should. Arkham DB, holy crap, for deck building for Vincent, because I don't have enough of a grasp of the card pool to start with, and then also knowing like the legality of it for his heals damage. That was amazing. So
Yeah.
huge shout out there as always. I mean, I know we're all using it and so forth, but yeah, just incredible work.
He and Carolyn are always the ones to like make my brain groan a little bit, and then like as I start to make cuts, I'm like, all right, am I still legal? Like,
Yeah. For me too, Mark and Rita with the trick and tactic access. Like, oh, I can take this card? What? Yeah.
the number of times I've gone, that's a tactic.
Yeah. Yes. Tespiskin, I hope I'm saying that right, asks about Vincent in TFA. The 1 agility, too much of a liability. Well, here's the thing. If you get poisoned, you take physical trauma. So, oh no.
Yeah.
I
think there's
Yes,
there's a
but-
couple treacheries you might struggle with, but like Ian said, the most common thing that happens when you fail agility on a treachery is you take damage. So
Yeah. There's also
Yeah.
I feel like if we say go for it,
Yeah, vengeance would be the tricky one, like finding a way to deal with enemies without just murdering them. Yeah. I'm sure there's a way, just have to put some thought into it. There are some locations in other campaigns and in certain campaigns that like have you do agility tests with some very bad consequences. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a few that I know of. But the nice thing with the Vincent is then you got your on the mend, that's 2 icons boosting your agility up to 3, and your seeker, so you probably have a pretty full hand in other icons lurking around, so should be okay, I think. But yeah, probably TFA would be the vengeance, figuring out how to deal with that.
There's also one card that I'm really excited to play with Vincent is in solo, especially because I've played him in a multiplayer bit. But Soul Sanctification, which is neutral, is the 3 XP permanent, exceptional, so it's 6 XP. But for every point of damage or horror you heal in excess of an investigator's current damage or horror, place 1 resource on Soul Sanctification as an offering, still counts as healing, and then you can spend those offerings to get you +2 on a skill value for a test. Limit twice per test. So you could boost yourself up to 5 agility, or that'd be 7 combat.
7 agility
willpower.
with an on the mend. Like
Yeah. Right, like it's I mean, it's
you
6
have to reach
XP,
for it, but you could do things.
you know. But now, like, I mean, with this card out, I need to go look back at Carolyn, Because one of the things was when she would heal a bunch of horror, sometimes like, well, everyone's so healed. It's like, well, I can, if you have 1 horror on you, I'm going to heal you for 3, and now I have these boosts to help it with whatever else. So.
Could
Yeah,
you?
like, honestly, it's...
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, Soul Sanctification is just a boon to support healing in general. And like you get double bonus out of it with Vincent because you've got that and on the mend for healing someone.
Mm-hmm.
Could you use a power worded enemy that's kind of beefy to use Soul Sanctification, or am I interpreting that wrong?
You could. Yeah, you sure could.
I'm just not thinking of like the big but not elite enemies.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have options for that in every scenario, but if you can grab like a Servant of the Lurker is one that comes to mind, where you just like grab that with power word and then you can just heal all day. What's the heal command? Is it Mercy?
Mercy.
Yeah.
God,
I love power word. Guys, please don't taboo power word. It's fine.
It was I'm gonna third it then, because it was fun in Vincent. I built it as a cheeky, like, so I could use the Go word for the name and call it Vincent Van Gogh and everything. But I don't think it was ever overpowered when we played it. It definitely helped in the different situations, but the cost to get it firing as needed.
Like, you've got to pump 10 XP into that card before it becomes like bonkers. And if you've put 10 XP into a card, it kind of should be a bit bonkers.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Don't taboo power word, please. Nick.
It's also very action intensive, as Teacup says.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like when you go hard on power word, it is your turn. You're being a monster handler.
Yeah.
And it's fun. No taboo, please.
Between that and Servitor, like, I mean, you can just have the Puppet Master. You're not actually doing anything. You're just... And throw in some guidances in there. Oh, you never take a turn. Never do an action. There we go. The real Carson build.
So, obviously, we all love Bonesaw. Like, what do you guys think decent options are for Vincent's kit beyond that?
Alchemical Distillation.
Is that the new customizable one?
It is. The customizable one that I think is only great in Vincent, quite honestly. Yeah.
It's the one I'm like least familiar with.
I know. Gotta pull this one up.
Yeah.
I know. I know I mentioned it I mentioned it with Edge, and I'm mentioning it again with the Scarlet Keys, but like normally with the drip feed of releases, I could like know the cards very well as they came out because I only had little batches at a time, but I feel like when these big boxes drop, it takes me forever to know cards.
Yeah. First of all, love the art on it. I'm going to read it quick because audio listening and newish cards. So it's a level 0, it's customizable level 0-ish. 2-cost asset, willpower icon, item, science traded, customizable, uses 3 supplies. Action, spend 1 supply, choose investigate your location and test intellect 1. If you succeed, that investigator performs one of the following options. Draw 2 cards or gain 2 resources. Takes up a hand slot. The thing is, though, the customizables, 1 XP adds an option to heal 2 damage. 1 XP adds an option to heal 2 horror. So I'm looking at this in Carolyn as well. Let's see, 2 XP to make it come into play with 5 supplies instead of 3. Quickening Distillate, 1 XP to make the option move up to 2 times. So, yeah, this is almost a Carson-ish card, but I mean, I don't think you take it in Carson. But anyways, it's that support thing, but the amount of healing you can get, I mean, it would take 3 XP, so to get it to 5 supplies, and you can heal 10 damage off of it. Pretty good.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
Another card that I like for when I've run Vincent more fighty is Runic Axe. If you do the Inscription of Glory that you can heal when you defeat an enemy as one of the options, healing damage. That feels good. Usually I'm using the Bone Saw to fight a lot, but Runic Axe is another good option.
Now, is On the Mend limit 1 in your hand?
In your hand.
Yeah, it's one per investigator, yep.
But it's limit 1 On the Mend in your hand, so you can commit On the Mend to a Runic Axe test, and then it's after you defeat an enemy, which would happen before you get rid of the skill cards. But you can then, because it's not in your hand, you can take an On the Mend, and then that On the Mend that's in the skill thing would get dumped at the end of the test.
Is it technically set aside at that point, though? I suppose if you're playing 2-player, it would be.
You can't take the one that's in the test, but if you have another one that's set aside, so like if you're playing,
which you only do in multiplayer. Yep.
Yeah. So you could loop it, loop those two through your hand with the Runic Axe.
Assuming your compatriot is not holding the other On the Mend, and you have to like give them side eye.
How dare they?
Also, I really, really want to trademark for the customizable cards that they are level 0-ish. I like that.
Writing it down.
I think another fantastic card just for Vincent in general, an upgraded ally is Girish Kadakia, the Punjab detective. 4 XP, so on the more expensive side, but just is able to soak damage and horror from other investigators at your location, and is a free trigger when a skill test is being performed by an investigator at your location. You exhaust him. That investigator gets +2, and if it's successful, you heal 1 damage or horror from that ally. So nice little healing engine there, and you're helping boost other people's tests. And the thing I like about that is it's just a free trigger for doing what people need to do to play Arkham, which is take skill tests. So, well, most people, not including people like Preston, but yeah. It's a great ally.
Oh man, and that body on Girish 3 and 3, like that's hot.
Killer body. Yep.
Did we talk about surgical kit yet?
Ooh, I had that one set up. Yeah.
I mean that one fits. I can read that one. I mean it's almost a cop out just with the theme, but you guys know how I love theme. Because surgical kit is 2 cost, 3 XP, 4 supplies, reaction when one of your card effects heals damage from an investigator, spend 1 supply. Either that effect heals 1 additional damage, or you draw 1 card and heal 1 horror. Additional option for 2 actions, heal 3 damage from an investigator or ally asset at your location. I think I've almost exclusively used the reaction for the card and the horror healing.
Well, and Vincent with his low-ish sanity.
Yeah.
I really need to play a Vincent and Mark campaign where Mark just goes absolutely haywire on hurting himself, and Vincent is just strapping back together. And here's 2 wild icons, and here's 2 more. And
Mark's running forward, and then the shell shock kicks in, and he's getting hurt, and then the doctor patches him up, and then you rinse and repeat until you either win or go insane.
Just pull the sawbones,
the stim packs.
It's nice too because the surgical kit, that like big heal 3 damage ability, helps if you get your wounded bystander weakness out. Which I'm kind of curious how you all deal with the wounded bystander, because I can tell you how I deal with it, which is I don't. Like, most of the time, I don't want to use my healing on the bystander, and I just eat the trauma. So I'm not sure. Like, I have tried to keep them alive or like delay it, but I just found most of the time it's a better use of my time. Just sorry, bystander. But how do y'all?
You just hope Mateo's there to
give him his last rites.
Yeah, last rites.
Yeah, I would say the way I deal with the bystander is in a panic most of the time, because it never comes out early when like you're setting up and you have a handle on things. It is always in like the last 3/4 of the scenario when you're closing in on the end and you're like, oh. So,
just a wounded.
Yeah, I agree with I agree with your approach, Ian. If I can fit it in, I like to heal 1 damage off, because then he's got basically a 3 threshold, and then that's just enough breathing room. I feel fine about it. Or like, hey, if he's starting to take more, I could go do something. But for the most part, it's let it ride.
If I have the Bizarre Diagnosis in my hand, I'll use that just to get rid of him, so I don't need to think about it. But otherwise, I think it depends on the state of the game. Like you said, Justin, sometimes I'll just heal 1 just so he's got a bit of a buffer. And we're 2/3 through the scenario. I'm like, I can probably keep him I can limp him to the finish, and that's fine. I don't need a full heal. And hey, maybe that soak is going to come in handy, actually. So,
I'm trying to remember. We literally just talked about it. You only take the trauma if it perishes, right? Like if it ends the game in play, you're fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
He has to die for you to get sad.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as you said.
So sometimes it's just keeping them alive. But yeah, I found between In the Thick of It, which I always run with Vincent every single time, and Wounded Bystander, you're usually rocking, a fair bit of trauma through the course of the campaign. But again, you're playing Vincent, so it's probably okay. Even if you're taking mental trauma, you have some ways of dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
At Arkham Knights, I think Nick had a Vincent deck that he handed me to play for.
Yeah, you did.
when we did Machinations, and then it popped out, and it was the first time seeing Vincent, and so then I was reading, and then looked across the table, and Mika and I were like, wait, who cares?
Yeah.
Free soap. Funny thing about some weaknesses in standalone, right? Like some are crushing and some are like me.
Well, Teacup brought up searching for Izzy, right? That one doesn't matter.
Yep.
Roland's doesn't matter.
Any of the
Zoe's,
tasks.
Yeah.
Did they follow through on the trait on that one? Did Wounded Bystander get the task trait? No, he did not.
No.
I mean, he technically is a task, right?
It's not a task, it's a duty.
Yeah.
You said duty. All right, boys. Closing thoughts on old Vincent here. It seems like we're glowing about him across the board.
He's real good and can never lose.
to damage, that is. He is tied for second for my favorite investigator of the box.
Okay.
I'll say
tied with Daryl Simmons.
In terms of seekers, he's currently tied for my favorite seeker with Amanda.
Ooh.
And might take the top spot. I really like Vincent.
Yeah, he's definitely in my top 6 in the box for sure.
High praise. This entire time we've been talking, I've been writing down names for new Vincent decks, so this is going to be fun.
I appreciate your commitment to the craft of good deck names.
Yeah.
Is a deck really a deck if it doesn't have a good deck name?
No one would know. Because it doesn't get looked at. All right, wonderful. Well, boys, let's move it on to a little bit of tentacle time. We're running slightly long, so let's go with whatever shorter thing you had this evening. I'll start. So I was talking about this in the patron chat before Christmas, but it's like my annual tradition to get heavily marketed every year, on social media. They're not toys. They're super expensive and they're really well made. They're stunt lightsabers. And every year for a decade, I have looked at them, drooled for days probably, and then eventually convinced myself that there has to be something better I can do with that money. But this year, I did not win that particular fight. So I did go ahead and buy myself a couple of lightsabers. Let's see how loud this is. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry if that blew anyone's ears out. But anyway, yeah. Oh my God, I did it again. I'm so sorry. I won't touch it again. Anyway, it's been really fun because I have been just twirling around with lightsabers as I walk around my work from home office. And I've been playing with toy lightsabers since I was like 5 years old, so I have a good appreciation for craft. And boy, I don't regret it. It was probably the most frivolous expenditure I've made in a very long time, but no regrets. Neo Sabers is where I got them from.
Hey, Sean, for those who can't see the video, what color lightsabers did you get?
Well, these ones can change. I got a like a Jedi type hilt design, and then of course you can't. Who gets one lightsaber? You can't do that. And then I got
right.
Got a
That's
dark
madness.
Jedi design. So the Jedi design, I'd like always keep on like blue purple, because you gotta.
I'd worry about you if you didn't do that. Not because I value judgment, but just of who you are.
Oh yes, yeah. Purple pride, baby. Anyway, it's kind of weird. I don't know if anyone else is like this. Like, I just like to fidget with things sometimes. If I'm working, I don't know. I'll reach against and grab another toy that I have here on my desk, courtesy of Justin. Like I've got just like a key of Thror from the Hobbit movies, and it's just sitting on my desk, and sometimes I'll sit and twirl with it. So as a grown-ass man, I appreciate the craft of a good toy that you can just fiddle with, and these are some of the best that I've owned in a very long time. So
Sean, I'm
Toy
sure you'll be
lightsabers.
very, very surprised to hear that there is a whole market of toys for people who like to fidget with things. Fidget toys.
What? No.
If you will. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I slept through all of 2016.
I just keep in like the OG fidget. It's a rock. It's a
Yeah.
It's a orbed piece of obsidian,
Okay.
and then I refer to it as materia from Final Fantasy.
Nice.
And I just twirl it in my hand.
Yeah, I've got a worry stone back on my work desk too, the like little concave one that you just like futz around with your thumb. That's a thing.
If I'm playing
Anyway.
card games, I shuffle my hand repeatedly. Forever and ever and ever. Yep.
Yep. You and like every Magic player ever.
That's where I got it from.
Yeah, I
I
know.
playing
I
Magic,
played
I
with
started
Magic.
shuffling my hand.
All right. Anyway, that's me. Simple and effective. Scott, what's been grabbing you?
So Ian and I are going to save our technical time about the show Andor until the second episode tonight, or the second episode this month, depending on if you're listening on the recording. So you have until then to catch up to Andor. We'll be as spoiler-free as possible.
I haven't seen anything yet.
Perfect. Anyways, games that have been catching me. The Clone Wars Pandemic board game thing, which I actually bought at Arkham Knights because they had the
I know.
promo droids. And we said like 9 times, hey, we should play this game, and then we didn't.
I still feel bad that we never got around to it.
It's really fun. It is. I was worried about it being too much of a Pandemic clone. It is not for me. I can see the bones. Like there's parts of Pandemic in there, and I see the relationship, but it's a different enough game that I'm really happy with my purchase. I've just been playing solo, and yeah, it's been really fun. I'm hoping there's expansions for it. There probably won't be, but I guess we'll see. The other game I recently got
Wait, before you move on from that one, like the only Pandemic game I've played is like OG vanilla Pandemic. So like what are like the major mechanical changes that make it Star Warsy?
Each character has different powers, which kind of
do you only play as Republic characters?
Yes, and there's like a choice of like 8 or 7 of them, and then there's a villain. And so there's battle droids, and there's also those droid ships, the droid controlling ships, and there's also a villain character. And you don't ever find a cure, you just fight droids and the ships or whatever, so you need to deal damage to clear them out. And you roll a die, like a 12-sided die, but it looks like one of those proprietary dies that came with the FFG Star Wars RPGs.
Okay.
Those
like
ones.
It just has symbols on it instead of numbers?
Yeah, and so you can actually take damage when you're fighting droids, and that discards cards from your hand. And when you have cards in your hand, you actually you essentially exhaust them. You don't have them in your hand; they're out in front of you. and you exhaust them to do stuff, and they unexhaust. Like, you never spend them from your hand, like original Pandemic.
Okay.
Droids show up on certain planets, similar, where like you shuffle, the cards, put them back on top, and then you're drawing from those ones and stuff. Like, those planets get hit more often. Yeah, and like the missions, there's like a deck of like 20 different missions, and the difficulty is like, how many of these random missions are you going to put in your mission deck? So you'll like have 5 missions, and when you complete those 5 missions, then you go on to the villain mission, and you have to defeat those 5 missions, get through the villain mission before basically you hit one of the end triggers of the game. And the villain also gets
what's
a turn.
like the rough playtime?
Oh, I play a solo game in half an hour.
Oh my god, I might have to buy this.
Yeah,
I also have it if you would like to try it.
It is very slick.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott sold me on it with the little bit we got to talk about it at Arkham Knights, and then I had heard a review from someone else who basically said if you're anyone other than someone who's just sick to tears of the Pandemic system, so like even any minor similarities would drive you off, buy it. So
yeah,
Okay.
if you liked the Clutches of Chaos scenario from
Sorry, what one?
yeah, it's fun. I don't know. It's simple. It's not in a bad way, but it's not incredibly. The mechanics aren't complex. It's more, I need to think tactically each turn, but I find it super fun. Speaking of complex, I also opened my copy. Finally, I got it like a month ago from Kickstarter, but of Vital Lacerda's Weather Machine. And if you know Vital Lacerda, he likes to build mechanics on mechanics on mechanics in board games. This one took me an hour to punch and sort.
Okay, yep. I was like, is this the one you shared pictures of?
Yeah, it's massive. It weighs 14 pounds. And yeah. I pretty much bought...
If enough people around the world build the weather machine, then together we can control the climate.
Well, the story of the game is that the weather machine has already been built, but it is not working quite correctly. So you're trying to fix it so you don't cause droughts and fires and freezing things. But you're a researcher, so you have to publish papers, and you have to also get government grants, and you have to fire up the weather machine. You have to get the supplies to do those, which you get through like gaining resources and like buying this stuff. And then there's the lead scientist who built the original weather machine. You have to interact with him, but he's just a token on the board, and he moves around. And then once there's so much research done, then you can cite other people's research, and that helps you.
So there's a wandering
quicker.
NPC.
This is the part of the explanation where if it was a video instead of audio, it would go to black and say, literally 10 minutes later.
Well, I mean, if you watch a Learn to Play video, like they're like 45 minutes to an hour long. And there was one video, it's like Learn to Play and a 2-player playthrough, and it was almost 4 hours long. Like, it's Vital Lacerda. He's a very specific type of designer. You have to like his style of designing, which I do. And I don't try and force him on anyone because it is a very particular thing. Like, if one of you are like, oh, should I try it? Probably not. I don't know.
I'm going to default to no.
Yeah.
It sounds like a thing I would absolutely love to try once if I was playing with you, Scott. Just because I know how much you love it, I would love to see it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a thing I would ever enjoy beyond that.
I think you'd be the one the closest like it. I don't. It's. Some people call him like the person who makes Spreadsheet the game. So
wait, now tell me more.
Yeah, a lot of his games
brought me back.
There's one of the criticisms of him as a designer is he makes, it's not just how to get this resource. It's like you have to collect these 3 resources and make this engine to get this resource, which gets you this engine, which makes you this resource. Like, it's just that on that on that. But I think they're absolutely brilliant designs. But they are just the
dense,
near the pinnacle of complexity, almost to a fault. Some would say to a fault. So, anyways, I'm excited to play it. And it has a solo mode, which is part of the reason I got it. So
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, how about you?
Yeah, my two shorter ones. One, it is the time of year. Apparently, it has a time of year for it that I get back into Minecraft. I enjoy Minecraft as a 40-ish-year-old person. That feels weird to say for some reason. I don't know why that one has a little bit of shame tied to it. But I also
it's one of those things where like there are some things where like the fandom kind of take over the game, and that is definitely like the children fandom like became synonymous with Minecraft for a while. So I get it.
But no, I get back into that for a while, and it helps that during the pandemic when I would get into it in the spurts of it, my wife does not play video games, but she watches when I play Minecraft. And it started with she walked in one day and she's like, "Is that a black sheep?" Like, yeah, go get it. And so it's more, she can't play, but it's an easier game for her to direct me to do things. And there's just a general exploration element. So every once in a while, she participates in the game in that way. So that's neat. So I've been doing that. And then have also recently started playing Diablo 3 again. Was trying to find a game that for a group that Sean and I are in with two of our other buddies, that we could all play. We had played the ever-loving crap out of Ghost of Tsushima, and ever since then have been trying to find something for 4 players, and that's just the one we're trying right now. And it's been the chaotic fun that the Diablo 3 can be.
I feel like everyone's playing the most obnoxious characters they can, and anytime we get into a brawl, it's just effects and chaos and AoE, and then then the enemies are dead, and we get loot and we move on.
Yeah, it is more an activity we do so we can chat and connect, and it's thus far. I mean, I don't know what the life of it'll be, but thus far it's filling its purpose. So that's what I've been up to.
I haven't played a Diablo since OG 2, so it's been a minute. Perfect. Ian, bring us home, baby.
All right. So, as Scott mentioned, I'll talk about Andor next time. It's hard for me to talk about anything else other than Andor. But other than that, I've been trying to catch up on Phase 4 of Marvel. Kind of inspired by recent play of Snap and Champions. Like, okay, I need to finally, before Phase 4 started, I was caught up. I had seen every Marvel movie. But I fell behind, as I think a lot of people did after Endgame. And so I had, before this recent attempt to catch up, I had seen WandaVision, loved WandaVision, seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I was more kind of mixed on that one. And I had seen She-Hulk. I liked that one. And then in terms of movies, the only one I had seen is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which overall I enjoyed that one. But other than that, nothing. I know Phase 4 has been a really contentious phase of Marvel, but I mean, what the hell isn't contentious now in terms of media? So that's fine. And
anytime the word fandom is attached to a thing, that's gonna happen.
Yeah, but it's been especially contentious in terms of the reviews. But I just tend to need to watch it myself because my tastes tend to differ from the stated opinions a lot of times. And I guess I don't need to be caught up in Marvel, but there's that completionist in me that does feel that compulsion. I need to watch it all. So anyway, I started in trying to catch up. So I started with Black Widow, watched Black Widow. Quick reviews. I thought it was okay. Not super memorable for me, but Black Widow's family members really stole the show in the movie. I'm not sure if you guys have seen Black Widow, but her sister, and her dad, played by Hopper from Stranger Things, David Harbour. Those were the two standout characters. It could have just been the movie. It could have been the movie about them instead of Black Widow, and I would have been happy. So, yeah. So it was fine. And then I moved on to Shang-Chi, and that one I really liked. I had heard mixed things about it. I really liked the first half more than the second half. The second half, when it moved more into the CG battle, it was fine. But that first half, I was really ooh, I'm a sucker for martial arts movies. So But overall, I liked it, and it really reminded me. I was thinking about it, like, we live in an era where every movie is so, like, closely scrutinized and critiqued endlessly. But, like, if Shang-Chi came out when I was, like, 8 years old, 10 years old, whatever, in the 80s and 90s, I would have been all about that movie. Like, I know that for sure. Like, it's the kind of movie that would have just been, like, one of those movies I would have watched over and over. So, that was
like
cool.
the same movie hits different if it's your like 30th action movie you've seen versus like the 5th action movie you've seen. Like, totally.
For sure.
Well, it also hits different, to Ian, to your point about reviews. It hits different if you're trying to go in and just watch the movie and see what you think about it versus, wow, this is the 35th movie in a franchise, and how is it moving the needle? And I thought that one was just a lot of fun. We went and saw it at a drive-in theater, so that was cool.
And just like, you know, the time period when I was growing up, it was, you know, like the late 80s, early 90s. There were so many martial arts movies back then. It was like kind of the peak of that particular piece of media. And it still occurs, obviously, and more so in overseas movies. It's kind of died out a bit in terms of an American cinema. So just to see that kind of foreground, that was kind of why I liked the first half more, because it was more of the like concrete kind of martial arts fight scenes. That was cool. So hopefully they'll make sequels to that, because I'd like to see where that goes. So next up I have Eternals. That's the next one I need to watch. Again, heard mixed things, as pretty much every other Phase 4 movie I've heard mixed things. And then I'll continue through to Spider-Man, which I haven't seen yet, and Love and Thunder. But the
You never saw Spider-Man?
Nope. Pretty much had the whole thing spoiled because I'm on the internet, but that's fine. I'll watch it
that's a
eventually.
problem.
Yeah. But right now, I took a break from the movies because I moved over to Loki, so I'm watching through the Loki show. I'm like a couple episodes in. I'm really liking that.
What are you thinking of that so far?
It's taken a different approach than I expected. Like that was one where I really hadn't heard anything about the show. I didn't really pay attention while it was on, so I didn't really know what the plot or the approach was going to be to integrate Loki. And so far, it's been a pretty good storyline, and like the interactions between him and Owen Wilson's character are pretty hilarious. So I'm enjoying that.
I'll be interested to see what you think when you finish that one, because I think I've seen probably about as much as Phase 4 as you had before you started this. I have seen Loki though, and I think that one sets up where the next phase is going more so than just about anything. So I'll be interested to see what you think of the ending.
Nice. Yeah. That's it for me. I will probably keep updating throughout the years. I hopefully catch up on Phase 4.
Okay, maybe this isn't a question I should ask this time of night, but I'm going to do it anyway. Since Ian set up this lovely little rabbit hole, do you guys think that people's ambivalence toward Phase 4 is as much to do with like Phase 4 itself, or is it more like oversaturation of hero movies and how good an endgame was, so people just are less interested in what happens afterward?
Oversaturation.
I think it's oversaturation. I don't even think it has anything to do with the quality of Endgame. I think if it wasn't as just everywhere, and then it was still a good ending, then people would be ready to roll into the next thing. But it's just this sense of, how do you keep up? How do you keep up? And so then it's like, oh, it's another one, I'll catch up. And I think that's where we are, because it's no longer a novelty due to the oversaturation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at with Star Wars. And I never thought I could get there.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar on Star Wars until Andor. Which that was a game changer.
We'll check back on that in a couple weeks.
But this was also...
Don't talk about it, Ian. It's a trap.
This was also the phase where Marvel moved into TV, which is, I think, where it made it difficult to keep up. Because before that, it's like, oh, let's just keep up with some movies. But now it's like, okay, I got to devote time to like 8 episodes of a show or whatever it is. It's kind of a big time commitment. Yeah. So that's where I started falling behind. So yeah, I mean, it depends on who you talk to. I think for most people, it's just the saturation thing. I think like Endgame was a natural ending. And I think also when you say goodbye to like these characters that we followed for all this time, and now we have to meet new characters, that's always a tough transition. It's kind of like that thing that happens in Doctor Who, where one doctor goes away and like having to get used to the new one is tough.
100%. I didn't watch anything past Matt Smith, and not because I didn't like the show, but it was like, all right, well he's gone.
Yeah, I think whenever there's kind of a natural ending point in a show or a franchise, then it makes it easy for people to kind of jump off.
I think it's harder for the cinematic universes to like do the thing that comic books do, where like, okay, you'll lose a character, but then like the alternate universe version pops in, a series later, or they contrive some way to bring them back from the dead, or any of the like billion mechanics that comic books have to like keep the same characters around or reintroduce them in different ways. I think it's harder for the cinematic universe to do that because like you hear some of the actors talk, particularly the ones who have to like bulk up to play these superheroes, and they're just getting old and they don't want to do it anymore.
Well, they naturally age too, so that makes it a little odd. And in the comics, a lot of times, that character goes away for a year, 2 years. It's tough to do that and keep interest at the timeline movies are on. Yeah, because you also have to have production and marketing, and you don't want it to be, oh, this character died, and then 6 months later. But don't worry, in 18 months, they'll be back.
Yeah. It's just interesting how the medium changes that so much.
And we also don't have yet for where Marvel is at, that like Thanos was that storyline was such a big driver. Like once we started getting closer to like really ramping up that's when my interest really like peaked a lot for Marvel. And we don't really have that big villain yet. I mean, I haven't watched all the Phase 4. I know there's been some like hints from what I've heard, but like we don't have that like imminent threat. And so yeah. And the final part of it is, it has to be said, like, I think for most people that's the problem with Phase 4, but there is that contingent where it's just about, now we're replacing the main characters with women and people of color actors, and for them, it's like this big culture war element that they're just, like, that's driving a lot of reactionary behavior, I think, towards Phase 4.
Yeah. Well, people are allowed to be stupid and wrong, so it's fine.
Apparently so. Yep.
Well, on that note,
on that happy note,
thanks, Justin. Thanks, y'all, for joining us for episode. This is 145 still, right? Yeah, 145 of Mythos Busters, and we'll see you guys in a little bit for 146. Bye.